Welcome to the third studio broadcast of Unbox, a digital event series where we invite leading brands and industry experts to dissect the challenges and opportunities of building a leading brand in an ever-changing world. Unbox is also about finding new purpose-filled solutions together by having conversations with industry experts where we explore and learn from our shared experiences and insights. My name is Sabine von Jafke. I'm an international communications catalyst, moderator, and entrepreneur, and I have the pleasure of navigating us through today's agenda, where we'll be meeting 4 knowledgeable experts to explore the theme of what is the next premium. And during this broadcast, I just want to mention you can also chat with Holmen Iggesund's experts using the chat function that you will find in your browser. Now, today's informed and conscious consumers are demanding more from brands than ever before. And to succeed in the premium market, it's not just about luxury anymore. You also need to offer sustainable products of high quality along with unique experiences. But what other values do consumers connect with premium? And what will be the premium of tomorrow? And how does this affect the brands, the products, and above all, the packaging? This is what we're going to dive into today in Unbox number 3. And with that, I want to introduce our first guest of today, Helene Olsson, who is Director of Global Industry Innovation at Kairos Future, who's here to really share her views on the future of premium based on consumer behavior and trends. So welcome, Helene.
Thank you so very much for inviting me to this event.
I wanted to sort of look back. I mean, we've had an unprecedented year with the pandemic of COVID. And in your perspective, how has this sort of influenced or impacted consumer behavior and attitudes?
Well, it actually had a huge impact, and specifically in the personal consumer at their homes. What we would call the cozy domestic change is that you started to convert your home in a kind of castle. So whatever you could consume in your castle, which is everything from being more comfortable, but also consuming more leisure, more films, more reading, but also being comfortable dressed was the first change, but also in the safety. And in third round for the comfort. This means that you needed all of a sudden also to consume online in e-commerce.
And looking at sort of online and the theme of today of premium, how significant has sustainability been through all of this, or is becoming?
Well, it's actually everything is about sustainability. That's the main issue, because sustainability is so important that not being sustainable, that's a non-issue. It's mainstream.
It's become this hygiene factor.
Yes.
And I was thinking, in addition to sustainability, we talk a lot about transparency and authenticity and so forth. What are your sort of takes on that?
Well, obviously, also the consumer is becoming more and more interested and also informed. So it's absolutely obligatory for the consumer to have transparency. Otherwise, you will not be a trustful brand or company or interactor.
And sort of just diving a little deeper into sustainability and transparency, how has this really become the drivers, and why are they such important drivers at this moment?
It's mainly because of technology that it's accessible, and it's also because of the change of values. Because what was previously perhaps not seen as certain ethical things, now it really has to be perceived as true in order to be perceived as transparent.
And looking at premium, I know that you've done a lot of research in Career Future. That is what you do, a lot of research for leaders and organizations to really be able to propel in the future. What's your take on future trends on looking specifically at sort of premium out of sort of the packaging and consumer perspective?
Well, I think the most important one is that you should consider that the premium is not what it used to be. It's something completely new, which is going from being something perceived as very luxury and elite, going to something which is rather very smart. And how does you perceive that? Well, that as a consumer, that is that you want to make conscious decisions. You want to make sure decisions. You want to make sustainable decisions, and you want to be engaged. So that's means that the consumer in one way or another needs to be perceived as a smart consumer.
Smart consumer, conscious smart consumer going on in the future.
Yes.
I want to dive more into this with you. You'll be joining me shortly in a short panel.
Yes.
But before I also introduce the panel, and before that, our next speaker, we're going to take a peek at a short video clip from the luxury packaging trend that is Lux Pack in Monaco that Holmen Iggesund attended, and asked some of the luxury brand owners about what challenges they see when it comes to premium and also the future. So let's take a look at this.
Consumers expect companies to be not just behaving in a sustainable fashion, in an ethical fashion, a responsible fashion, they expect businesses to have causes.
And now I think there is a kind of a new cool where people are actually thinking that sustainability is also even cooler probably than luxury.
Generally speaking, I would say Northern Europe and mainland Europe are the most developed in terms of their sustainability awareness. But yeah, it varies significantly, but overall there's certainly a shift in that direction.
But it is a global movement, and for sure the new generation in every country will be more into sustainability. Maybe it will take different kind of shapes in each of these markets. I see that in the UK, US market, vegan is a very important stuff. In France, it's a bit less important compared to green formulation, plant-based formulation. But at the end of the day, all of these subjects actually are gathering to a kind of unique sustainability, ethical vision of what should be a brand and what should be a company today.
Consumers want science-based targets, they want commitments to UN Sustainable Development Goals. Businesses are looking for concrete evidence because increasingly consumers are looking for it.
It feels like packaging will be like the key issue in terms of sustainability and the first that any consumer will see. We are all dreaming of very simple and lightweight solutions that would actually enable us to have the lowest impact on the environment for the future.
You may not have 8 layers of packaging. You might only have 4 now, but they're all made a better way. They last longer. There's more value in that secondary packaging process, and the primary package is made more carefully. And I think consumers are starting to be more aware when they get home, however exciting it feels to open all that up, you throw that all away and you just sort of feel slightly sick. That packaging also has to be designed to look amazing in a digital world, not just feel amazing in a store or feel amazing when you get it. Our refill is luxury. Yeah, just sell me a very beautiful glass container or some other material that's been made from, primarily reused materials, and I'll refill that. That's okay.
And as we heard in the video, sustainability is a key factor going forward. And sustainable packaging is a vital part of this for the conscious consumer of today. And the market for premium brands is evolving, not least within the beauty industry, where innovation is thriving and new products are being launched on the market, like vegan, organic, sustainable beauty brands that are being launched to really address the needs, the multifaceted needs of consumers of today. Now, our next guest is the founder of Pure Play Skin Sciences that launched India's first vegan beauty brand, Plum Goodness. Shankar Prasad found that India's beauty market was missing transparency, and he was inspired from his travels abroad, where he was amazed by the variety and quality of consumer brands, and this ignited him founding Pure Play Skin Science in 2013. And with that, I want to say a warm welcome to Shankar, who is joining us via link. Welcome.
Hello there. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I thought you would just briefly, if you could tell us about Plum Goodness and what, in the consumer's eye, is premium about the brand.
Yeah. So Plum started with a very simple philosophy of be good, right? And that's what is reflected in everything we do, whether it's about being vegan as a brand or donating 1% of our sales to environmental causes as members of 1% for the planet, or in looking to be as sustainable as we can in terms of packaging. Now, from a consumer perspective, what people love about Plum is that we deliver what we promise. They get a sensory experience that matches with the best that they've used, and we do it at a price point that doesn't burn a hole in their pocket. So put all these three together and you get some attributes that people like about the brand. Its authenticity and its transparency, as you mentioned in the beginning.
Very true, and really infusing sustainability into that. Just tell us briefly, sort of out of your perspective, what were your main drivers when launching a beauty brand on such a vast market as India?
So we launched about 8 years back, and the market 8 years ago had just two ends of the market. We had one end which was, very mass, functional products, and the other end was prestige brands at a very high pricing. There was nothing in the middle. It's the middle that we were after, and it's the middle that we are still after. And this middle comprises consumers who are willing to pay a premium for quality, for values like sustainability, for products that work, and at the same time, their expectations are very high from the product. So that's the sort of space that we are looking to play with Plum. And we've been, I think, fairly successful at addressing this middle of the market.
And sort of diving into premium, which is today the theme, I'm a bit curious to know, how does India see premium? Is it sort of really anchored in sustainability and sort of the new experience, or is it anchored more in sort of the luxury and that aspect of it?
Yeah, I think it's at the moment it's more of the latter. It's driven by experience. Whether you talk about food, it's about travel, it's about residences, it's about beauty and personal care. People are after experiences. People are looking to upgrade their sort of quality of what they consume overall. And sustainability is entering the mind of the consumer at the fringes. It's not yet a core decision-making variable when they are evaluating alternatives. So, I mean, all the way from automobiles to clothes to, travel to whatever else. Currently, it's driven a lot by experience and a sense of feeling special. And so that's what is driving most of the premium market at the moment.
I also read in an interview where you said India is premiumizing. What would you, I mean, you mentioned it a bit, but how does India compare to other countries in that sense, if you sort of look at that wording?
Yeah, so we have a very long way to go in terms of premiumizing. And sometimes people like me who live in the larger cities make the mistake of thinking that what I see around me is India. But it's useful to remember that India is an extremely diverse country. I would go so far as to say that it's perhaps the most diverse country on the planet, whether by economic status, whether by languages spoken, whether by weather and climate. It's very, very diverse. So The movement towards premiumization is more felt in the top cities and in some of the larger urban centers. The belly of the market, the bulk of the market is still driven by functionality, driven by uh, value for money, and numerically speaking, I think 85 to 90% of the market is still mass and not premium. So it's about maybe 10-15% of the market, depending on which category you look at. But in a category like beauty and personal care, not more than 10-15% of the market is premium or prestige. The bulk of the market is still dominated by value for money products. The country, having said that, it's changing in only one direction, and that is towards premiumizing. There are times when it goes fast. There are times when the trend slows down, like, for example, in the last 18 months. But overall, as the economy continues to do well, the percentage is definitely increasing.
So the possibilities are there. And sort of taking into that, what should premium brands really consider if they're wanting to enter the Indian market?
I think first and foremost, as I said before, it's about making the consumer feel special, and sort of peel that a little bit. And what do you mean by feeling special? They've got to have what I like to call brag value. So you got to be able to brag about that product to your friends or colleagues or neighbors or relatives or whatnot. I think that feeling of quote unquote having arrived is what, I guess it's true not just for India but overall. But in India, it's all the more front and center of the premium and luxury market, that people have to get that feeling and an acknowledgement from outside that quote unquote they've arrived. And it starts from brand positioning right into sort of the exclusivity that you offer. If it's there with everybody, then you don't really feel like you've arrived. So you got to create that exclusivity, followed by the sensory experiences that you get, because only when they get to the product do they experience the sensory bit of it. You got to give them a sensory experience that sort of justifies the price. Make no mistake, even in the premium and luxury segment, people look for value. So if they've paid a high premium, sure, it may give them social recognition and status, but if the sensory or the functionality of the product doesn't match up, it's not going to result in a repeat purchase.
And just as a last question, I spoke to Helene before, everything that has happened with the COVID and the pandemic and how it's affected consumer behaviors. And I was just curious to know, how has Plum Goodness, did you have to change anything in your communication or packaging or anything during COVID when sort of e-commerce maybe was more accessible or more in demand due to the pandemic?
Thankfully for us, we started off as an online first company. And to this day, we are 2/3 online, 1/3 retail. So fundamentally, from a packaging or a communication or product or pricing perspective, we didn't have to do too much. Most of the adjustments were around retail, wherein it was more of a management thing, sort of managing the crisis rather than doing something fundamentally different. So we were sort of blessed to be having online reach and familiarity. That we didn't have to rewire ourselves in any meaningful way during COVID, other than the usual adaptations that businesses have had to do during this time. Thankfully, in India, we seem to be over the hill for the second time, but we don't know how many more hills are there to overcome.
Shankar, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and thank you for all the good that you're doing with Plum Goodness, and best of luck in the future.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And now joining me in the studio, I have Uwe Mellichar, who is a packaging expert and designer, also president of EPDA and jury member of Red Dot Design Award. And he's here to share his view and expertise on the current and coming trends of premium packaging. So I say warm welcome to Uwe.
Thank you, Sabine.
Thank you for
here.
Thank you for joining us here today. You have a long expertise within packaging, and you sort of funneled in now into the sustainable, circular packaging sector. How has your way of working changed, and why did you choose this path?
Well, I can say it with the words of a friend who told me, well, we are decorating waste. We designers are decorating waste. And I felt a little bit the same. And after 24 years and 11 months, I thought it's time to change. I wanted to work along my purpose. And that's sustainability. That's what changed a lot in my life and in my work life.
Well, that's really applaudable. And how would you sort of define sustainable packaging today and sort of tie it into premium packaging?
I would say it depends. It depends a lot on the purpose of the package. So does it need to protect the product in a very special way? Does it need barriers or whatever? Does it need to stand out on the shelf, or is it sold online? So there are a lot of demands for packaging, and that defines also the way sustainability can be adapted here.
And if we sort of look at premium packaging, like you said, it's sort of sustainability is at its core more today versus just being a sort of a luxury item. How do you see that this sort of has changed over time as you've been in the industry for so long?
Well, in the past, luxury or premium was related to bling bling, to a lot of like shiny effects, shiny surfaces. And nowadays it becomes more discreet. The codes are different. We also need to decode that. So the haptic means something, as well as, the brands need to have a purpose. They need to have an attitude. People demand that from premium brands, and they're looking for that, and they're really asking them to express that, and they also want to have a channel back. They want to interact with brands.
That sort of feedback loop.
The feedback.
I was also thinking, if we look at premium, what kind of questions do you get from brands? What do they really need help for in this transition of going from, one way of storytelling and packaging into a more sustainable, infused way of doing it?
Well, if talking about sustainability with brands, it's often a discussion along materials, but it's much more than materials. It's something that affects the whole supply chain, the whole value chain. And I think we need to stress this aspect more. And for example, if you talk to a designer, you have somebody who is independent, who has the freedom to look into different materials. There's a good saying, if you have a hammer in your hand, you see nails everywhere. And that also applies to this discussion. So I think brands, if they ask me for support in sustainability, I can help them to see it in an objective way and bring people, other stakeholders into the play, because I have a huge network.
And that's also so important, having that new network and being an enabler. And are you working yourself on any specific solutions today? I mean, renewable resources or whatever it might be?
Well, I have to look into materials, and there are so many out of there. You can make, material out of coconut husk or avocado seeds, algae, milk bacteria, whatever. Renewable sources are very important and interesting at the moment. You can make a lot out of, wood-based material, let's say cellulose. And this is something I'm really looking into. I'm trying to bring it into the projects I'm working on. I'm not only consulting, I'm really I'm also going to the converters, to their machines, to look what's possible, to really link those new materials, new demands from the markets to a real project and to make this happen.
And would you say, looking at packaging, is it sort of the brands and their innovation cycle, or is it the consumers becoming more conscious? Who is putting demands on who for actually, the development of it?
Well, yeah, the consumer is demanding, but there's no direction. So they just want to make sure that they're doing something good for the planet, for the habitats, for their health. They look at the brand owners and ask them to come up with solutions. And they are looking into the industry, what the industry provides them. So the substrate suppliers, the converters, and then something is, transformed out of this, and this will end up in the stores on the shelf and is hopefully what the consumer is asking for. I think this is the way it works today.
Yeah. And sort of shortly, we're also going to dive into a panel session soon. But what would you say are the current trends, not threads, but trends in sort of motion when it comes to packaging? Technology is a big enabler, but what do you foresee in the near future?
Technology is super interesting in that respect. There are smart packages, and let's say 5 years ago, it was also used for getting attention. So things were like with printed electronics, blinking and saying, hey, here I am. I'm a package. And today it's much more advanced. So you can match the information from your phone with the information which is about the product on the package in a digital way. So there are smart solutions that add value for the customers and for the brands, but also in the whole value chain or supply chain process, technology can add a lot. There's the Holy Grail project, for example, or our Cycle initiative, where products get a digital passport via the packaging, and that takes them all the way to the end of life of the package, and the recycling system can identify what it is made out of and where it has to go to. So at the end of the day, we won't have 5 different colored garbage boxes anymore, but one, and the job will done by technology.
That's amazing. Technology truly is an amazing enabler. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on this. I'll be welcoming you back shortly, Uwe. And before we go forward with a short panel to really dive deeper into this, we're going to look at a short video clip again from Luxpack in Monaco, where Holmen Iggesund this time asked brand owners what solutions and success factors they see when it comes to the future of premium packaging.
I think there's an opportunity for businesses to be braver, be more transparent. That's one of the things I see really in the luxury industry, is a fear of transparency. I think if you're trying to win in the field of sustainability, it's about collaborating and doing projects together that have an outcome that's to everybody's advantage.
I think for the legacy brand, it's of course much more complicated because they are coming from something that is already existing, like products already existing, the factories, the full ecosystem already existing, and they have to change. And change, as we all know, is probably the most complicated thing that you have to do in a company.
If companies slow down a little bit, businesses have a chance to streamline. They have a new chance to innovate in perhaps a different way they hadn't thought about before. And there is just growing demand from the financial industry that comes from regulatory world of the governments that they have to prove credentials. So in a world of luxury where there's so many of the companies are SMEs, they're growing, they're looking for funding. If you're leading in those areas, you put yourself in a massive position of advantage.
I think the key success factor for luxury brand will be to move fast, because actually the consumer expects some changes and they expect them now. They expect the packaging to change, the formulation to change, and they have expected that for like 10 years. So now they really expect that the luxury brand move. And the fact is that indie brands come with qualitative solutions, so they show that it's possible. So yes, this is the key success factor for me.
Innovation will continue to be hugely important and a driver, though definitions of innovation may change. Authenticity, so the ability of luxury brands to tell stories not just well, but to tell true, authentic, engaging stories about their brands and their products. And for luxury, it's about delivering truthfully on the quality and durability promise that was the start of luxury. It was about products being made with love to last longer.
Let's see in the future if actually luxury still means the same. Probably today it's a question of money. probably tomorrow it will be more a question of consciousness and being actually in line with the conviction of the most educated consumers that will be probably very into sustainability, very into consciousness, very into ethics.
So I'm now joined in the studio again with Helene and Uwe. Welcome back to both of you. Great to have you both here for a panel, also because you both come from different perspectives. There's sort of the consumer behavior perspective, and then we have sort of the packaging perspective. I wanted to tie into the film that we just saw, where they were sort of looking at, you know, the key success factors for the luxury market going forward, and just have your quick take on that. So Helene, if I start with you.
Yeah, I would say that in general terms, it's very difficult to make a global perspective of that, because it's very different from, for example, if you go for a premium in Asia, Russia, or if you go for premium in Europe. Because if you go for a premium in Asia or in Russia, for example, it's still very much perceived as being elite and high-end luxuries. While in Europe, it's much more about how to create a meaning of life and how to get into your deeper inner self. So I would say that what you perceive as premium, that's really different from different kind of consumer perspectives. And also in terms of age, it could be very different. For example, if you are a young consumer or if you're an elder consumer. And we see, for example, very many trends in what we call the Generation Z, where we have a huge tribalization of different consumer trends.
Really interesting. And Uwe, out of sort of a packaging perspective?
I can only underline that, yes, absolutely. And we've heard that from Shankar earlier today, that luxury or premium means completely different, orientation in different countries or different regions, cultures. But in general, I think, as we've seen in the video, brands have to move towards responsible packaging, responsible products and responsible packaging. And that's what's going on. And I've seen the subline positive luxury. That's a fantastic word. So positive premium, responsible luxury. These are what brands have to
thrive for.
Right.
And sort of looking at premium luxury, I mean, we're talking a lot about scarcity being part of the luxury component, and even sort of digital luxury in that sense. How do you see, what is the luxury market, if we take it both offline as premium luxury or online, because we're communicating both with a product, with packaging, with price in a different way in both different aspects? What would you say?
Well, yeah, scarcity is so. As said, the codes are different, and if you look at Japan, for example, they have a long tradition in packaging and in minimalistic packaging, and we can learn a lot from Japan on sustainable packages for the future. If you look like little threads and the haptics of these objects, it's something which does not need much material, does not need to overpack things to give the premium message and to display or reflect what's inside.
Would you agree?
Yes, but not partially. Because I also think that it's about how you touch the consumer. If you're really in real life, then you have much more possibilities, because you can touch with the feeling, you can touch with the smell, you can touch with how it really means, what you could do with the product and services, etc. But while you're online, then you really have to fight a lot more about what you perceive is the premium, and how you can get that touch in a much more real way.
And if I can just dive into that a little, because I know that you've also done research on sort of all demographics and all ages, but specifically maybe on Gen Z. How would you say is the best way to communicate then the premium brand? As you say, it's a component of storytelling when it's also more a digital product.
That's a really good question, and that's the complex one, because you need to deal with the different kinds of consumers, specifically for the young ones, because they are the most demanding consumers of all, because they know what is fake. They know what is not true. So they want also to be engaged. And there are different kinds of engagements. For example, there might be some young consumers that would find that it's the most appropriate way is to do something which you're not feeling ashamed of, for example. But somebody else would find that what the other young consumer is feeling ashamed of, it's not at all what the other young person is feeling ashamed of. So it's not easy to deal with the consumption of premium for young generations, and specifically not for the Generation Z.
Yeah. And what would you say with packaging experience?
Well, I see the point, and especially if looking at younger target groups, there is another issue. They don't need to own things. They want to be part of a brand story. They want to have it, but not own it. So the shared economy and everything, and that applies to packaging as well, I would say. So we have to think about reusable packaging. That's an issue because they're really looking into those sustainability topics, and we have to have an answer for that and for them, for these target groups.
And premium is, of course, across all ages. So it is really finding your demographic and finding your specific target group. But what would you say is premium packaging's most current challenge today? I mean, where lies the biggest challenge?
I would say that the biggest challenge for packaging today is to be smarter. And also to make the consumer smarter, not to feel smarter, but to be smarter, both in how you use it and how you actually are consuming the products and the services. And in terms of packaging, that could be a big challenge because there are still lots of opportunities to do so. And I think that it depends upon your possibilities to let the consumer hack their package.
Hack their package. And I was thinking to sort of correlate to that question and looking at the luxury industry, what would you say, looking at trends, we talked about it a bit before with tech really being an enabler, what suggestions would you give to the luxury industry of sort of the forthcoming trends for packaging and experiential aspect?
Well, to sum it up, I would say less packaging, but better packaging. Very simple. Maybe we don't need a secondary packaging, but we can enhance the primary packaging. We can use different materials, looking into new sources, and making the best out of the
packaging or the way it's conveyed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we don't need to have to put much material into to make a bright and good communication, good communicating packaging.
I was also thinking that also ties into that question, what do brands need to do to really stay relevant? Helena, if I ask you first.
Do the innovations with the customers and to hack lab with the consumers because they need and they love really to co-create their own products and services. So I think that you have to be very human as a brand and open to collaborate and also to try to let the creativity flow in order to make the consumers smarter together with them.
And I guess on that collaborative approach, you have the customer, the client, then you have the fan, and then you have the ambassador of the actual brand. And what about you, Uwe? What do you think brands need to do to really stay relevant today and going forward?
Well, I agree. I mean, they have to listen to their customers. They have to look into the industry's innovation coming up from all the converters, suppliers, and so on. And they have to listen to designers as well, for sure, because they are neutral and can really guide them the right way and see things which they may don't see on their own. And then we'll have a better packaging in the future. We need responsible packages, being responsible for what they're doing.
Being responsible and having a collaborative approach.
Yes, and I also have a last tip here.
Yeah.
Dare to be local.
Dare to be local.
Because the big shift is going now from global to local. So in the packaging industry and in the consumption, I think there is a wonderful opportunity for everybody to really hack locally how you can help the consumers to be more deepened into their consumption locally. and do that together with that ecosystem.
A very good point to bring up. Thank you both for everything that you do, both keeping us future-orientated and also the packaging future-orientated, and best of luck going forward. And with that, it's now time to wrap up the third episode of Unbox. And for that, I'd like to welcome Neil Hossel, who is Brand Manager North America at Holmen Iggesund. So I say a warm welcome. Neil, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Sabina. Wish I could only be there in person.
Well, we're happy you could at least join us via link. Now, I know that you've been following today's content. Any key takeaways that you want to share with us?
Yeah, wow, Sabina, there were some really interesting takeaways and insights from everything about how this notion of premium is evolving and changing. And while there are certainly some elements of premium that endure, things like craftsmanship and quality materials and ingredients, we've definitely seen a shift toward more community, toward purposeful packaging, towards lifestyles that have more meaning. To be sure, though, I mean, premium is best described as evolving, right? And will always be, to some extent, a function of cultural nuance, of gender, of ethnicity, and definitely of age. So there can really never be, in my mind, one universally accepted definition of premium. However, I did hear a lot of commonality in this evolution, as I said.
Very well sort of summarized in that aspect. And I was also thinking, I mean, you've been on the North American market, I think, since 1994. So sort of looking, because we talked a bit about geographical differences. So tell us a bit, how do you see premium from a North American point of view?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, Sabina, I'm not sure that I see the U.S. perspective as very much different than what we've heard today. I mean, from my research, the trend reports that I see on an endless basis, and especially from the brand interactions that I have, I see a lot of the same trends evolving. I mean, for me, premium is a measure of value, and by extension, our values. And here is where I think today we heard there's a real discernible shift from things that are expensive, costly, and I think Uwe used the word bling, moving from that towards, say, community, purpose, meaningful lifestyles. I mean, I definitely see premium moving from status or it's something that symbolizes status to a full-on brand experience. And clearly brands are using and leveraging technology to more fully immerse consumers in that brand experience.
It's really more about that emotional connection, nearly, with experiences and brands and services and products. I also wanted to ask a question that I asked Uwe and Helene, and that is, what do you think or recommend brands to do? What strategy should they have to stay relevant going forward?
Well, I think it's really important, first and foremost, for them, and they for sure do stay on top of these trends as they develop. I think it's really important we heard a lot today about how sustainability is being embedded into not only packaging, but into a brand experience in general. And I think it's really important that the brands take the time to understand the complexities of sustainability and understand really as relates to packaging, what's really important, right? So, I mean, if we think about maybe the overriding or the biggest issue that we face socially in the world today is climate change. And if that's the case, then I think it's really carbon footprint and carbon emissions that are sort of the be all end all. And I would also say, that we heard a lot again about transparency, and transparency is really important. But I heard during one of the interviews during LooksPack, somebody used the term fear of transparency. And I think that fear is actually pretty well founded. So my recommendation to the brands is definitely be transparent, but be prepared to answer the questions that will inevitably come from your efforts to be transparent.
Very true. And sort of that was looking out of a brand's perspective. And I know that you've been working with Holmen Iggesund for many years. What would you say are any challenges that the company needs to address to stay relevant as well? Because times are changing and things are evolving.
Well, again, I mean, sort of my recommendation to the brands is to stay on top of these trends. I think it's important that we understand the trends as well. And clearly, there is a movement towards clean and green and a value for circularity. And I think that it's very important for us when we engage and interact with the brands to really understand not only how we're aligned from a sustainability perspective, but in many cases, how we can enable, right? So we've been a very transparent company, especially as it relates to carbon footprint calculations and things of that nature. I think it's really important that we be prepared to articulate to the brands how exactly we help them and enable them in reaching the commitments that they've made from a sustainability perspective.
Really, once again, proof of a collaborative work. And Neil, thank you so much for sharing your insights and for doing that summary. And really also, finding that conclusion that, like you say, brands really enable their customers not only to interact with a brand via their products, but also to interact with a brand via, the experiences that they're offering. And that the premium segment is really moving from symbolizing just status, like you mentioned, and to more a full-on brand experience. So thank you so much. The best of luck. Stay safe and healthy.
Thanks very much, guys.
And of course, I also want to extend a thank you to all of our experts and guests today for sharing their knowledge, expertise, and learnings that hopefully also been beneficial and interesting for all of you, our viewers. And thank you for joining us for this third edition of Unbox, where we dived into the theme of premium. And as always, we appreciate your reflections and feedback. So if you have anything that you want to comment or give feedback to, please use the comment section in your browser below. You can find all the interviews with our guests today on iggesund.com, and also feel free to contact Holmen Iggesund's experts for a private consultation at any time. I also want to add that you can download Holmen Iggesund's published guides, deep dives, that now have uploaded on the theme Premium Trends. And here is a guide, giving tips on how you can approach premium packaging and also great examples of purposeful premium packaging solutions. So go to iggesund.com to learn more about that. And all of you who really appreciate the Unbox web series, then you'll be happy to know we're already working on the 4th edition of Unbox, and we're looking forward to inviting you to that shortly. In the meantime, do follow us on LinkedIn, and if you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, please do that at iggesund.com. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Until I see you again, stay safe and stay healthy.